So here we are with the assembled radio. We've got 3 spare parts here, which I guess we have 4. We have 4 spare parts, which I'll just shove out of the way. This was actually fastened to the circuit board up here. It needs to be removed. Now that just consists of breaking it off with a pair of diagonal pliers. So the board should be almost perfectly flush with these digits. And then there are 4 mounting holes. They are here, 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 and here. So these 3 corners and here. If you remember, I put a JST connector here on this side of the board to accept the speaker wires. I've moved that to this side of the board. So it's the only thing fastened to this side of the board. It's supposed to be 25 nuts and 25 screws. I do notice there's at least 3 that are longer than all the rest. I don't know what that means. I've installed in the 4 mounting holes, which are here, 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 and here. A screw and a nut. On top of that nut, I'm going to put a spacer. I would have expected the spacers to fit without the nuts. But to clear these capacitors, I need to space this 10mm spacer up the thickness of a nut from the board. At this point, I believe we install the front plate. So, front plates installed, secured with 4 screws, slightly bowed upward because of these filter capacitors. Then we begin attaching the side plates. This side plate would attach here with cutout for the volume control. So the side plates are attached just by 1 screw and a nut. And here it is, the opposite end of it. The nut fits in this little T-shaped slot. The screw enters through the narrow end. We'll try the other end. And it'll fit there. Now we have two ends, but they're just held on with one screw and nut each. Put this antenna up, and here's the side plate that accepts the antenna. Well, the first thing I can see is the antenna should not be mounted to the front of the printed circuit board because the hole interferes. So I'll have to take this back apart. Okay, I've repositioned the antenna to the back side of the printed circuit board. See if that made any difference. And it did. So now we have, I guess we have two ends and a top, all secured by one screw. So I'm going to begin putting the second and third securing screws on the end plates. The rear plate holds the speaker. I'll show you the problem here. If we just fasten the rear plate to the speaker, the speaker has notches here and here, and I believe they're intended to be lined up with these holes here and here. After all, they won't do anything over here. There apparently are no provisions to prevent damage to this. And you'll see the reason I put the JST connector facing this way is because now I can connect it. Now, there's a fair amount of clearance between the, start again here. There's a fair amount of clearance between the speaker and the electronics components. It could be that the 4 long screws could be intended to hold the speaker in place and afford the ability to stick a piece of wire mesh or something in here. So what do we have here? We have 4 longer screws, one spacer, one 104 capacitor, one 22 picofarad capacitor, an LM386, and 6 3mm. Take that back. 5 of the long screws. 6 3mm nuts, and the miscellaneous components. Including a transistor. That's right, we had a spare transistor. And this piece of board, which if you don't break off, you can't put the side panels on. Well, you can't put the top and bottom panels on. In my opinion, a JST connector on the bottom side of the circuit board, or at least connect the wires. I believe they furnished some wires. Where did they go? Well, they disappeared into the mess. But it wasn't a very long piece of wire. Anyway, if you use a JST connector on the back of the board, and the same thing for the wires, because there's very little room to get the wires from the back, from the front to the back. And the antenna connects to the back of the board, not the front. Now these things would be nice to know from the very get-go. The other thing is these three 50-volt capacitors, here, and here, need to be firmly pressed tight against the board because they establish the clearance distance. The tightening up of these screws actually compresses these capacitors. And it tends to pick up things because of the strong magnetic field from the speaker. Of course, you need to furnish the 5-volt coaxial connector. At the other end of it needs to be a 5-volt supply. I'll add some modifications to this document, and I'll put it in the subdirectory in the description. Thank you.